It was a crisp autumn evening when the cracks in my world began to show. My wife, Claire, had been out with her friends, or so she said, leaving me at home with a bottle of wine and an old movie to pass the time. We'd been married for 7 years, long enough to know each other's rhythms, habits, and tells. That night, something was different. Her voice on the phone had been too bright, her laughter too forced. But I brushed it off, reminding myself not to overthink. She walked through the door just after midnight, giggling like a teenager sneaking back after curfew. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair slightly disheveled, and she carried the distinct scent of someone else's cologne. My stomach churned, but I forced a smile, acting as though nothing was amiss. Claire flopped onto the couch, kicking off her heels, and looked at me with a carefree grin. "You're in a good mood," I said, setting down my glass. "Yeah, it was a great night," she replied, her voice high-pitched, almost giddy. "The girls and I had such a good time. Nothing crazy, just drinks and laughs." I nodded, studying her closely. Glad to hear it. As the night wore on, I noticed she avoided my gaze and clutched her phone like a lifeline. Suspicion crept in, but I said nothing. Confrontation wasn't my style, not yet anyway. Instead, I decided to wait and observe. After all, trust was the foundation of our marriage, or so I'd believed. The next morning, Claire was unusually cheerful, humming as she prepared breakfast. Her phone buzzed repeatedly, but she made no move to check it. When she left the room, I couldn't resist. I picked up the phone, heart pounding, and unlocked it. We knew each other's passcodes, one of those little signs of trust that now felt like a cruel joke. The messages were damning. "Last night was amazing," read one. Another, "I can still feel your touch." My vision blurred as I scrolled through the stream of texts from a contact named M. There were photos, too, taken in a dimly lit hotel room. Claire, laughing, glass in hand, draped across a man I didn't recognize. My world shattered in an instant. The betrayal was like a physical blow, stealing my breath. I placed the phone back where I'd found it, forcing myself to remain calm. Rage would come later. For now, I needed clarity, a plan. Claire returned to the kitchen, oblivious to my discovery. She kissed me on the cheek and handed me a plate of eggs, her smile as radiant as ever. How could she? How could she pretend everything was fine after what she'd done? Over the next few days, I became a ghost in my own home, watching, listening, piecing together the extent of her deceit. The one-night stand, as I soon learned, was anything but harmless. It wasn't even a one-time occurrence. Claire and M had been meeting for months, stealing moments I thought were ours. The rage simmered beneath my skin, but I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I focused on gathering evidence, documenting everything. Texts, photos, even the receipts she carelessly left in her purse. My plan began to take shape, and with it, a sense of grim satisfaction. On the surface, I was the same devoted husband. I cooked her favorite meals, laughed at her jokes, and even planned a weekend getaway, just the two of us. Claire seemed relieved, as if my attentiveness absolved her of guilt. Little did she know I was laying the groundwork for her downfall. The weekend trip was my masterpiece. I booked a cabin in the mountains, secluded and picturesque. Claire was thrilled, gushing about how much she needed the escape. I packed our bags, ensuring everything was perfect. Even the camera equipment, a new hobby I'd taken up, came along. She didn't question it. The first night was magical, at least on the surface. We drank wine by the fire, reminisced about our early days, and even shared a dance under the stars. But my mind was elsewhere, focused on the culmination of my plan. The next morning, I told Claire I wanted to take some photos of the scenery and suggested she sleep in. She agreed, snuggling deeper into the blankets as I grabbed my gear and headed out. Only I didn't take landscape shots. Instead, I set up the cameras in our cabin, discreetly capturing angles that would tell the story I needed. When Claire finally woke, I suggested a hike, claiming I'd found a beautiful spot nearby. She was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed. We spent hours wandering the trails, and for a moment I almost forgot the betrayal. Almost. Back at the cabin, Claire's phone buzzed incessantly. She glanced at it, her expression shifting to one of annoyance. "Work stuff," she muttered, dismissing the notifications. But I knew better. That evening, I prepared her favorite dinner, pouring her another glass of wine every time hers neared empty. She laughed, carefree, unaware of the storm brewing. When she excused herself to use the bathroom, I took her phone from the counter and sent a single text to M. Let's end this. Then, I deleted the thread, leaving no trace. By the time we returned home, Claire was back to her usual self, her laughter echoing through the house. But when she reached for her purse, her face went pale. She rifled through it, panic growing with each passing second. "Where is it?" she muttered, her voice trembling. "What's wrong?" I asked, feigning concern. "My wedding ring. It's gone," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh no," I said, my voice dripping with mock sympathy. "When was the last time you had it?" She looked at me, her expression a mix of guilt and desperation. "I don't know. I must have taken it off somewhere." I'd hidden it, of course. The ring, a symbol of our commitment, was now a tool in my revenge. The next day, I set my plan into motion. I'd prepared a file, meticulously organized, detailing her affair in excruciating detail. Photos, messages, even the receipts. I left it on the kitchen table, knowing she'd find it. When she did, the color drained from her face. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "The truth," I replied. "Something you've been hiding from me for months." She stammered, trying to explain, to justify. But I held up a hand, silencing her. "I don't want your excuses, Claire. I want you to leave." Her eyes widened, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, we can work through this. I'll do anything." "It's too late," I said, my voice cold. "You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." I'd already spoken to a lawyer, ensuring the divorce would be swift and in my favor. The evidence I'd gathered was enough to secure everything: the house, the car, even the savings. Claire had no idea what hit her. As she packed her bags, sobbing, I felt no remorse. She'd destroyed our marriage, our trust. This was justice. In the weeks that followed, I moved on, rebuilding my life piece by piece. Claire, on the other hand, struggled. M had ghosted her, leaving her to face the consequences alone. Friends we'd shared distanced themselves, siding with me once they learned the truth. She'd lost everything. One evening, as I sat on the porch, sipping a glass of whiskey, I reflected on the past few months. The pain of betrayal was still there, a dull ache in my chest. But so was a sense of triumph. I'd taken back control, refusing to be a victim. Claire's laughter haunted me no more. It was replaced by the sound of my own, a laughter born of freedom, resilience, and the sweet taste of revenge.